What is up, everyone? Welcome to another episode of the NerdBall Fantasy Football Show. I am your humble host, dendrologist specializing in the conservation of the endangered Robert Woods, and astronaut aboard the Pitts 8 Moon Expedition, Pete Rogers. And I am joined by fellow nerds, duck father and runner-up on the Great Russell Wilson Cooking Show, resident old man Clark Barnes, and a devout follower of the Anthony Lynn running back gospel, and Queen Bee of the Austin Eckler Hive, the Ginger Woodsman, Nick Bodiford. Guys, how are we doing today?
Doing great, Pete.
Great, Pete. How are you?
I'm good. I always like to imagine that when you do that intro, Nick, that you're like falling down a hole or something, and that's why there's that residual echo. And it's
okay. Screw you too. I'm on solid ground. Thank you very much.
Ah, darn, and now it's ruined. The dream is ruined, Nick. Damn it. We should try to see if we could do a podcast where you're just in limbo.
Well, Nick isn't the only one falling down this hole of starting running backs in fantasy football. Some transitions are better than others.
Oh, Clark, every week it is a joy to watch, not only hear the transition you come up with, but watch it kind of like come to your mind while you're saying it.
See my eyes light up and I'm like, oh, I've got it. This is one of my new favorite things, by the way. The get the show on transition. I like it.
It's what everyone listens for. Everyone tunes into the show for Clark's get the show on transition. Yes, we have so much to get to, so much injuries, so much news. We have all kinds of people to get worried about. But of course, before we do all of that, we are going to start like we always do with props and flops. Clark, start us off. Hand out some props for week 6.
This is an easy one. Najee Harris has put up, I would say, 6 very, very good games to start his rookie career. Whether or not you should draft a running back in the first round, I think is, absolutely up for debate. No problem. But he's just been absolutely killing it on a team where he is the only one that's producing. Every team knows it's going to be the Najee Harris show, and he's still putting up pretty decent numbers and looking good out there. So my props are to Najee Harris.
Yeah. I mean, I just feel like he's proving that you should always take the first round running back, right, Nick? That's where the value is in the draft is drafting a first round running back.
Yeah, no, that's right. I mean, it's helpful because they needed a first read in Pittsburgh. They don't really have that many viable.
No, they don't have a lot of
receivers, not just pass catchers, but they don't have like a deep receiving core. So
they have an elite offensive line. Like, it's just the perfect scenario where you spend high on a running back, and it's paying off for them. So good decisions by the Steelers execs.
Yeah. And what I am seeing from Harris is a value add on his rushes. He just does not go down on first contact. He's catching balls that a lot of running backs his size especially aren't going to catch. Again, the first round running back debate, I don't think there's much disagreement here, but he is balling out.
No, he's
super good.
Yeah, he's looked every bit of like the value that the Steelers drafted him to be, right? The player that they were taking him to be. He is that has translated to the NFL. He's looked great. And if I were a dynasty manager and I got Najee Harris, I would be just elated because he's doing this on a shitty offense with a shitty offensive line in front of him. And you're just, really the only way to go is up for him as the Steelers then hopefully, fingers crossed, invest in an offensive line and continue to build that. They're eventually going to move on from Ben Roethlisberger at some point. And so you're going to get a viable passer under center there, which will make defenses, have to pay attention to that aspect of the game. And that's only going to improve Najee Harris's fantasy value from here on out. But he seems like every bit of the elite RB1 in fantasy that we thought he was going to be from this point till, next 5 or plus years at the very least. Nick, who are you giving props to this week?
I'm giving props to Donovan Peoples-Jones. So obviously for all NerdBall or just regular NerdBall and nerding out listeners, I was super high on Donovan Peoples-Jones, and then the Browns chose not to really use him. early in the season, and he was always efficient whenever he was getting looks. But there's been he had a great week last week. He caught like a Hail Mary ball and cleared 100 yards, scored 2 touchdowns. What I'm kind of excited by, though, what I really want to give props to is the fact that his game or his target totals: week 1, 1, week 2, 1, week 3, 2, and then he goose egged in week 4. And I think the coaching staff went, we can't let that happen again, because over the last 2 weeks, he's seen 6 and 5 targets respectively. Now, those are not huge target totals, but that is a big jump. He's running about the same number of routes as he has been, but it does seem like they're trying to scheme the ball into his hands. And it's promising that this performance in week 6 came after an increase in targets in week 5, which tells me this wasn't just Odell Beckham Jr. injured his shoulder. They actually are trying to work him into the game script a little bit more. So props to my man, DPJ.
Yeah. And you say 6 and 5 aren't a huge target load, but that, like, for the Browns offense that doesn't throw to wide receivers, that's huge. Like that's almost like 80% of the targets to wide receivers is that 6 to 5 margin, since Baker loves to either throw to Kareem Hunt or his tight end. So yeah, I famously at the beginning of the season traded Najee Harris for or not Najee Harris, we just talked about him, Nyheim Hines for Donovan Peoples-Jones in my dynasty league. And at first that trade was shooting me in the buttocks, but now Nyheim Hines kind of disappearing and Donovan Peoples-Jones emerging. I'm certainly here for it. So yeah, anytime you can haul down a 70-yard Hail Mary. Baker Mayfield, man, that was for having a torn labrum. It's his non-throwing shoulder, and we'll talk about it more in the news, but that was a hell of a throw by that man to get it down that far. He's a cannon.
Yeah, Peoples-Jones is just one of these wide receivers who seems to always flash every time he gets an opportunity, and you wonder why he's just going away. When it was a healthy Jarvis Landry and Odell Beckham, okay, I get it. But with all the injuries they're having, you really hope that he's going to get an opportunity, like you said, to keep running a high number of routes. And Pete, you nailed it. Six deep targets is a lot, right?
Yeah.
Keenan Allen's like 15 targets all within 2 yards of the line of scrimmage. It's a different game,
Yeah, they Browns play the Broncos, the Steelers, and the Bengals in the next 3 weeks. That's a pretty good slate of defenses for DPJ to keep this up. I am going to give props to Henry Ruggs, who back when we were affiliated with Fake Teams and went by a different name, I was a big Henry Ruggs truther coming out of the draft and going to Las Vegas or then Oakland, I guess still, but is still spotty. Like he still is a little bit of a roller coaster, but the thing is that the highs that you're getting from him are the highs that someone with his game breaking speed you think can give you, and his lows aren't too bad. Like since week 1, he's given you at the very least 50 plus yards. He's had multiple games over 75 yards receiving, a couple touchdowns. Like the Raiders seem to be able, or the offense seemingly is getting him those really deep looks, and he has the speed to both break those and get open past the defense for those big looks to be successful, but also break those into touchdowns. So I want to give props to Ruggs, who we always we're doing it with quarterbacks and we've done it with receivers because we have seen, rookies come in and immediately put up numbers and put up big stats. Anyone who doesn't do that, where it's immediately disregarded, it's immediately like, oh, they're terrible. They'll never amount to anything. And that's something to take advantage of if you're in a dynasty league, especially where it's like after year 1, everyone was down on Henry Ruggs. So I was like, I'll buy him for cheap. I'll, trade whatever, like a 4th round pick for him. And now he's producing he's wide receiver 29 in half point PPR, I think, around this. So like a high end wide receiver 3 who can give you wide receiver 1 weeks. That's what I think it is. So I always love to see a guy who, it sometimes take a little bit of time for them to make moves in the NFL. And when it happens. Good for him. Good for you, Henry Ruggs.
Yeah. Usage on the Las Vegas Raiders has been roller coasteric. From Darren Waller is not being used consistently, so it's really hard to peg who's going to get the ball when. But I think you really nailed it. Ruggs in his second year continues to develop. He's getting open and he's making plays. He's just not getting really, really consistent work, which neither are a lot of other wide receivers.
But he's a guy now who I feel confident in, like routinely starting as my wide receiver 4 or flex. Because even if it's a down week for him, he's still getting me 3 catches for 50 yards on the regular. And I'll take that as, my wide receiver 4 with the up that he gives you, which could not be said for last year. So improvements all around. For flops, Clark, you and I have a bone to pick with the Los Angeles Chargers and their complete no-show against the Baltimore Ravens. So I'll let you go first in handing out your flops.
Yeah, mine's just Keenan Allen. And this is really shaking my old man fist at Justin Herbert. Keenan Allen is 6th in targets at the wide receiver position, and he's the wide receiver 24, I think, in PPR. All of his targets, Allen's targets, are short. And against the Ravens, there were so many 3rd and 3s, 3rd and 5s where Keenan Allen was in single coverage. And you would just love to see Herbert force the ball to him even more than he is doing, because Keenan Allen is that type of wide receiver that if you just get it close in those big situations, he's going to pull it down. I like the idea of Herbert spreading the ball around, but I'm just really cheesed that Allen is being essentially wasted at the beginning of the season here from a fantasy perspective.
And I am cheesed in Austin Eckler putting 7 rushing yards against the Baltimore Ravens defense that was absolutely torched by Jonathan Taylor the week before. Absolutely torched. He did get 48 yards receiving to help return some sort of fantasy value to you. But my goodness, here I was thinking that this was going to be an absolute smash spot for the Chargers offense going against a Ravens defense that was getting Carson Wentz through 400 plus yards on them. And we were all let down, Clark, all let down. So flops in and large to the entire Chargers offense, but particularly Keenan Allen and Austin Eckler.
Yeah, the trainer in Baltimore put something in the Gatorade this week. That defense looked just outstanding.
A whole new world. They were flying on the carpet with Aladdin. It's a Disney reference, Nick. I don't know if you knew that.
Oh, fuck Disney. I'm trying to figure out.
Back down the rabbit hole for you, Nick. I'm pushing you down the hole again.
I'm just trying to figure out how this happened. And I know that Baltimore, they ran the ball a lot. They took advantage of Brandon Staley's defensive philosophy of we're just going to stop the pass and we're not going to bother with the run, or we'll have bodies up there to deal with it. But what I'm looking for, and I'm really curious to find, is to get an understanding of time of possession. And did they just kill the clock and keep LA from being able to get their high octane offense? I mean, it looked only 12 rushes on the day with 39 pass attempts for Herbert. 39, that's a lot, but that's not I wouldn't expect only 12 rushing attempts. Looking at 35 pass attempts. So I think Baltimore just played a really good game, and Eckler, he did flop on the ground, but he succeeded in the area where we expected him to. Baltimore's defense is really bad against pass catching backs. He went 4 of 7 for 48. That's respectable. And Keenan just did his high efficient thing. It did not make sense that they only threw the ball to him 5 times with Mike Williams running on a severely limited snap count. But yeah, I don't know what to make of this one.
So this game, I think a stat that I think teases out what happened in the game is the quarter by quarter box score. This was one of those games where the Ravens just got up early and just kept pounding them. So the defense had a really good idea of what the Chargers needed to do all game, and they just got after Herbert. And yeah, a really fun one to go back and watch. For Ravens fans. Chargers, you just move on.
Move on. Nick, who you handing out flops to this week?
Michael Pittman Jr. is getting floppy. So this just seems like a Frank Reich thing. He only gave Jonathan Taylor 2 carries before halftime. I think that some coaches that are really good, I think that he is philosophically a smart coach. They can kind of out scheme themselves and think that they have to get certain people involved when they really don't. And so T.Y. Hilton, he ran 16 routes and he was on the field for 50% of the snaps, but he was the team high, or he saw the most targets on the Colts this week. And of course, he suffered a hamstring strain, if I recall correctly. Quad. Okay. Yeah. So he suffered a soft tissue injury. And so, one, why are you scheming up an old field stretcher as the guy you're going to target the most. Like, I understand taking a couple deep shots to him, but 2, he hasn't been playing in weeks. When you do that, like, people are going to pull soft tissue. They're going to have soft tissue strains when you try to ramp them up really quickly. So it was just like terrible decision making all around. But how do you get Michael Pittman Jr. 3 targets against this team? Like, really aggravating stuff here. Pittman Jr. had been on fire over the last few weeks. Bad scheming by Frank Reich.
I mean, this is him regressing back to his week 1 performance, because since then he's been averaging 12 targets, 8 targets, 7 targets. To your T.Y. Hilton point, and this is one of the reasons why I know a lot of people were being like, if T.Y. Hilton is available on your waivers, you should go add T.Y. Hilton. I'm a little lukewarm on that, particularly because I feel like T.Y. Hilton was thrust into that role because Paris Campbell left very early with a foot injury. Like, Paris Campbell came onto the field, had a 50 plus yard touchdown, and then left because of a foot injury. And I think then that's where T.Y. Hilton was like stepping onto the field, and maybe their game plan was going to involve Paris Campbell running these kinds of routes. And had Paris Campbell been able to stay healthy, he was going to put up a nasty stat line. But I think you're right, Nick, in that this was like a T.Y. Hilton. You're on the field. We're going to get you targets. Get right, buddy. And then he's going to completely disappear from here on out. So I wouldn't rush to be doing anything with T.Y. off of waivers. And I think I understand the flops and major flops to Michael Pittman, especially, I mean, really letting Nick down. Nick, you promoted him everywhere. And it's just a bad move from a player to, when your stock is at an all-time high and Nick Botiford invests in you and is like, this is the guy to go get. And really that is putting your profile on the highest level of notoriety. And then you let him down in a big spot. It's just, Michael Pittman, maybe next time, live up to the expectations that we, and particularly Nick, have for you.
Thank you.
Yeah. And as far as making moves, I would highly recommend not looking at what a team did versus the Houston Texans and getting your hopes up. There are some teams that we know are just not good. So like what teams do against the Texans, the Jaguars, the Giants, the Lions, like don't bet your season on those games, guys. Like the Colts should have killed the Texans, and they did. That's meeting expectations. They don't get an A+ for that.
Yeah. And no one on their team gets that either. So Jonathan Taylor, your good performance. Don't get cocky. In the words of Han Solo, don't get cocky, kid. All right, let's attack the news
Disney
from
reference.
It was a movie reference. Clark, it was Star Wars. Do you know that movie, Clark?
Yep.
Yeah, Disney. Oh, well,
Disney
Nick doesn't
movies,
know it.
yeah.
That's right. Nick hates Disney, so he's never seen Star Wars. Nick, do you know what Star Wars are? It's Wars in the Star. I'll explain it to you later. We'll talk about this. This will be this week's Nerding Out podcast. Nerding Out with Nick Botiford, and we break down the Star Wars movies. All right, cue the music. Let's hit the news. All right, to start off the news, the entire Browns offense is injured, which is just not what you want to see. Baker Mayfield, like I said earlier, is dealing with a torn labrum and his non-throwing shoulder. He also dislocated his shoulder during the game, but still managed to come back in and play and throw for 234 yards. The real notoriety here is the backfield. Nick Chubb didn't suit up for week 6 due to a calf injury. And then Kareem Hunt, who was going to step into that huge workload, came in with a wrist injury, still played, but sadly left with his own calf injury, which looked like an Achilles tear. So we'll take the calf injury. He's out multiple weeks. That's been reported from Schefter. So speedy recovery for you, Kareem Hunt. But holy goodness, Clark, this team is struggling to stay healthy. What are your initial fantasy thoughts in terms of how this, particularly this backfield, but just this offense in general, is looking to you?
Well, we hope that the running back doesn't matter theme continues, because the offensive line is looking good and they are moving the football. So this is the time of the year where you need to know ourlads.com, who does fantastic depth chart preparation. So with the Browns, you're just looking up on our lads. You're like, okay, no Nick Chubb, maybe no Kareem Hunt. It looks like the Ernest Johnson and Demetric Felton are next up. And both of those guys have looked good. You hope that Baker is able to play, because even in his decrepit state so far this year, it's at least sort of a threat. And you kind of need that for this run game to work. You don't have to be able to pass really effectively, but keeping the safeties honest certainly helps. these guys, Demetric, Felton, and Dernis Johnson, are going to be like the next guys up on the waiver wire that we're going to be excited about, and that we need to really consider what our bids will be this week.
Nick, I know you're particularly high on Demetric Felton.
Yeah, I am. I don't know if the coaching staff is though. So in my mind, Demetric Felton is the direct backup to Kareem Hunt, and he's also just the overall number 3 running back. But I do wonder if we have like a parallel between this backfield and the receiver depth in Tennessee. So Clark, this was something you nailed earlier this year when you brought up the fact that Josh Reynolds was likely to be the number 1 receiver if Julio is out and AJB are out, but he's going to be inactive because he doesn't contribute on special teams. And I think we've kind of got a similar situation here with Dernis Johnson and Demetric Felton, where like Felton is he is unathletic. He's like if Frank Gore was a kick returner kind of a thing. Like he's very good in space, but he is not a great athlete. Dernis Johnson, like I might be able to keep pace with him in a 40. Like he is unbelievably unathletic, but I think he is the guy who it may just be their Josh Reynolds, where like they want a north-south banger, and Dernis Johnson ends up being that guy. So I look at Felton as the big play guy, and Dernis Johnson as the hard yards guy. Johnson was the man who came in and like took the lead back role when Kareem Hunt went out last week, which I was really surprised by. I figured that it would be Felton, but anyway, I think that there's a chance Nick Chubb plays. If he does, we're probably ranking him as like the overall RB2. Now he's going to be volatile because of that calf strain that he's also dealing with. But yeah, I mean, this like the stat that always stuck out to me was when Kareem Hunt joined this team, he was suspended for the first 8 games of the year, and Nick Chubb averaged 4 targets a game. When Kareem Hunt came back, that targets per game number for Chubb dropped down to 2.1. If we get back to this area where Nick Chubb is getting 23 carries and 24 targets, like we're in business. But if he is out, then I think that Dernis Johnson is the lead ball carrier. Felton probably garners more interest in PPR format, so like full point PPR.
Yeah, I like that a lot. I think that's a really good breakdown. I think a simple way to think about it in my head is if Nick Chubb plays, Dernis Johnson doesn't seem like he has a lot of fantasy value, and Demetric Felton, who we've seen even with Kareem Hunt healthy, even with Nick Chubb healthy, he's gotten 2 targets, 2 catches, and like 15 to 20 yards throughout pretty much every game this year, just in kind of a really small role. And that seems to me like the translation of like the backup to Kareem Hunt, where Nick Chubb, Demetric Felton maybe takes some of that passing game off of Nick Chubb's shoulders. But if Nick Chubb is also going to miss, because it's a Thursday night game, so it's a quick turnaround. So if they hold Nick Chubb out for another week, Dernis Johnson, that's your top waiver wire ad, because he's going to get 15 plus carries in this backfield that wants to run, and Demetric Felton is probably going to see 5 to 6 targets out of the backfield and is great in PPR leagues.
I always forget Case Keenum is the backup for the Browns. That's a pretty good.
They could also like put Baker on the bench for Thursday night.
Yeah. So that's not, if you do hear that Baker's not playing, that's not an all hope is lost situation.
That's true. And Case Keenum does operate that style, that heavy run play action offense very well. All right, moving on in the injury news, Antonio Gibson played through a shin injury against the Chiefs and is now getting an MRI to see the extent of that injury. I have not seen any confirmations as to whether or not he will be out for week 7. So that's something to monitor, but Gibson was on and off the field Sunday, which opened the door for JD McKissick to take over the backfield against the Chiefs. And he led the backfield in yards and receptions and had a nice game against Kansas City. Should people be going after McKissick on waivers this week, Nick?
Yeah, definitely. He's very good, and they're going. So I mean, they already plan on using him on a weekly basis, and I'm just double checking what their immediate schedule. Yes, I mean they're against Green Bay. Like Green Bay is going to push the pace on him. He's going to be a featured part of the passing game. I I will say, yeah, I guess I'll leave it at that. I would absolutely go add JD McKissick across all formats. Like fire him up in, even non PPR. I think he's a good bet for 100 scrimmage yards.
Gets Clark's seal of approval, and that's all that matters. Yeah, I like that call too. Especially, I mean, if Antonio Gibson can't play, JD McKissick becomes bottom floor RB2 with certainly RB1 upside, given the workload that he would be likely walking into and the role that he's already showed. I mean, he's the RB22 in half point PPR right now. So even with Antonio Gibson on the field, the man produces. All right, we've got a few more injuries to update you on, but I'm just going to quickly rattle through them, and then you guys can give your thoughts afterwards. So we'll start off with Dak Prescott leaving the Patriots game with a calf strain, but the Cowboys are on bye for week 7. And Dak doesn't seem too worried about the injury. So that's something to monitor. Kadarius Toney left the Giants game Sunday with an ankle injury and didn't return because the Giants just can't stay healthy no matter how hard they try. That sucks. Alex Collins filled in for an injured Chris Carson and ran for over 100 yards against the Steelers, but then left the game after getting banged up. And finally, we talked about Paris Campbell. He came in, had a 51-yard touchdown, and then left with a foot injury. What stands out to you, Clark, amongst this group?
Yeah, just the Seattle running back situation. We saw this exact thing play out last year with Chris Carson going down. DJ Dallas and Travis Homer are both talented. Neither one of them is probably has the breadth of talent to take over the backfield. So this could get really confusing, but there are a lot of teams, my team in some leagues, who are like having a real hard time at running back. And if you're one of those teams, either Travis Homer or DJ Dallas are both going to be, better than nothing fill-ins. I wouldn't go waste a lot of fab, but if you miss out on some of the more appealing guys this week, make sure you do put in a bid for one of them.
Yeah, DJ Dallas coming in for Alex Collins, a little bit of spelling him at the end. 4 carries, 17 yards, and 5 catches on 5 targets for 33 yards against
my top scoring running back in my league of record. So yeah, things are not looking good.
Oh, Clark. Oh no. Yeah, the running back position is getting bombarded with injuries this year. Nick, what do you like from that group, or what is your just 5?
Yeah. So whenever we see Pete Carroll say like, "Oh no, this injury is not a big deal," we all need to really put our ears to the ground and pay attention to what beat writers are saying, if any, and just see if like there's anything empirical that gets spit out, because Pete Carroll lies a lot and to himself. But so today he was talking about Alex Collins and basically said like, "Oh, some of it was cramps and he just got hit hard a few times," but he also, yesterday was saying that he suffered hip and glute injuries. So like, which is it? I don't know. Rashad Penny is coming back. The story on Rashad Penny is they tried really hard to force him into the lineup, kept getting hurt, had weight issues. And oh my God, I'm totally blanking on what he just had to deal with, but I think that they're going to they'll put him back in as the lead guy. Like if he's active, which he's supposed to be, I think that they'll put him in as the lead guy. DJ Dallas has taken over Travis Homer's role, so I prefer DJ Dallas to him. I prefer DJ Dallas to Rashad Penny. Oh, the knock I was going to make on Rashad Penny was just after they tried to cram him into the lineup for so many years, after drafting him in the first round, they ended up not picking up his 5th-year option. So like the team is not right now, as of today, expecting to re-sign him. So on the one hand, they might run him into the ground. On the other, they clearly don't have faith in him. So it's a volatile situation back there. I think that DJ Dallas's passing game role is the most consistent, but that might only be good for like RB5 PPR value.
Yeah. Yeah. Especially they're playing the Saints this week in week 7, who are they're stout against running backs.
Good front 7.
Yeah. So that's
but they still, David Onyemata has been on injured reserve. I'm going to double check this while we're doing it, because they had Marcus Davenport and David Onyemata were on injured reserve. I don't think that Onyemata has any chance of returning soon. But okay, so Quan Alexander with the elbow thing is out. Marcus Davenport is still on injured reserve. Yeah, so they are a little bit more vulnerable up in the front 7 right now.
Okay, so it takes sometimes, especially when there's like such a volatile backfield and there's so much research is going to have to go into figuring out who actually is the guy to add and roster and play in a given week. If the matchup is bad, I like to use that as just all right, I'm just going to stay away from this mess and not get myself involved. If the Saints can be taken advantage of in the ground game, and the fact that we know Pete Carroll is going to want to run the ball with Geno Smith under center, this is a backfield to monitor. These are players to keep track of. I think that the general consensus, and feel free to tell me if I'm putting words unnecessarily in your guys' mouth. To me, DJ Dallas seems like the guy who I would most likely want to target out of this backfield, assuming that Alex Collins is A, not available on your waivers, and B, set to miss more time. Because if he is healthy, he seems locked into that starting RB1 job in Seattle.
Yeah, and all of these moves they're desperation moves. Like, these are not like, oh my God, you should run out and pick up these guys. This is like, no, if you're hurting, here's a couple of options.
If you need a plug and play, like a home run guy, I actually would go with Rashad Penny, because I don't think Dallas, I'd be shocked if DJ Dallas sees more than 10 touches in this week. Penny is the guy who could get 20 carries. Perfect. I don't think he's any good, but he's that guy.
But he is the home run hit. If you're in a deep league and you're just getting absolutely rocked by injuries and bye weeks, I like that. Rashad Penny is a shot in the dark that you can take and look really smart when it lands. Finally, Pete Carroll did go on record Monday saying that he has spoken to Cam Newton about a potential signing. Now, obviously, this hasn't happened yet, and it maybe won't happen, likely could never happen, but we like to hear it, Clark. We like to at least hear that the Hawks are reaching out and maybe trying to find a solution that's not Geno Smith.
I am holding out hope that someone will give Cam Newton a job. I am not going to pound the table and say Newton's still a top 10 quarterback in the NFL, but he's at least a top 40 quarterback. And I'm just really surprised that someone hasn't gone out and signed him. I thought for sure the Washington football team would sign him. I guess we have some good thoughts about maybe why that didn't happen. But maybe the situation in Seattle will be a little better. I don't know why Cam doesn't have a job.
But if he were to land in Seattle, certainly DK Metcalf managers and Tyler Lockett managers would be very happy.
The last guy that we heard Pete Carroll brought in for a workout at the quarterback position was Colin Kaepernick, when people were starting to have a renaissance of sorts of maybe he actually was, a great guy and was fighting for the right thing. Because Pete Carroll will do this. He will manufacture a positive story about his team. So believe him if you want to. I think he's going to stick with Geno, just the Geno shit show. But yeah, that's just me.
Good Lord. Also, can we talk about Russell Wilson standing in a fake huddle and running fake drills before the game? Russell, come on, buddy.
My favorite part was that all of his passes were completions. He's just visualized, every single pass he threw was a 15 to 25 yard gain, and he's running up there.
After every time he pumps, just fucking done. Good job, Wilson. Good job, Russ. You're so good at this sport, Russ. Oh, man. Yeah, good point. Good point. No incompletions for Russ in Imagination Land. All right, before we move on to the Worry Panic Scale Index, I want to tell you, dear listeners, about our Patreon. Patreon.com/NerdBallFF. We have all kinds of perks for those wishing to join, including you can join our staff Discord, where we talk about football every weekend, our Starts and Sit hotline, where we'll answer your most pressing Starts and Sits questions, and you'll be able to submit questions to the show to be answered live on air. So if you want to support us, go to patreon.com/NerdBallFF. All right, you guys. It is time we move on to the week 7 portion, I would say, of the Monday show. Our patented Worry Panic Scale Index. We're bringing out where we're going to talk about 2 players and whether or not we're nervous about them and where we fall on this scale. Where 1 is you're busy staring at the beautiful changing leaves of fall to even notice that there's anything to be worried about. 5 is you see the haunted house on the hillside, but it doesn't frighten you. And a 10 is you're strapped down on a rusty operation table and a pantless mutant doctor's wielding a chainsaw talking about how he's going to harvest your organs. That is our scale for the week. And let's see, who should we start with? I am bringing to the table 2 men this week, and I'm going to start with Miles Sanders. And I have under my reasons why Miles Sanders should be on your worry panic scale index as just blank. Because by this point, you've all known that Miles Sanders has not been producing, has not been the RB1 in Philly, has not been doing anything that you thought he could possibly do in this offense. If I were a Miles Sanders manager, I would be panicking right now. I would be wondering what in the bloody hell I should be doing with him. So, Nick, where do you fall when it comes to Miles Sanders? Are you a 1, a 5, or are you strapped down in the operating table with a chainsaw wielding over you and you're like, I want my kidneys?
I probably like an 8, a 9, somewhere in that region where like I'm afraid of the chainsaw. We were kind of joking in Slack earlier today where like there is a part of me though where I'm not even panicked because I'm like I'm over this. Like it's not eliciting an emotional response from me at this point.
I'm dead inside.
Yeah, so I think it is strange to me that they kind of kicked his usage back up this week, and I think it might have just been because of Tampa Bay. Like Tampa Bay is just so brutal in their front 7 that they didn't want to bother trying to get Kenneth Gainwell going. But, the usage was trending towards Gainwell as being at least like a 50-50 guy and maybe being the coach's favorite. Against Las Vegas this week, and I mean, Las Vegas, Detroit, and LA, those are 3 teams that running back
stretch of games.
So what I might be trying to do is sell high. If Sanders, but then again, like, I don't know if you got 3 weeks of good matchups and Sanders still getting used. I don't know, but he's somebody who I probably don't want to be having on my rosters anymore.
Yeah, I'm with Nick here. The funny answer is 0 because I thought we've already done this with Miles Sanders 5 times. But yeah, the Eagles are just not that good, right? And Jalen Hurts doesn't look that good. He's still like we need to take a look at scoring for fantasy QBs.
Jalen Hurts is the epitome of like the not good quarterback, but like A+ exceptional fantasy quarterback.
And maybe he'll get there. I mean, it's a second year. He's a second round pick. I'm not throwing dirt on the guy yet, but you would think that after seeing this for a couple of games, the coach would say, hey, we're going to run the ball with our very talented running back. And that hasn't happened yet. I still think Miles Sanders is very good. When he gets the ball, he looks extremely talented. But I mean, yeah, like an 8. And then P.S. Philly fans, I love you. Miles Sanders finally gets a touch after like 2 quarters, and you would think the Phillies just won another World Series. You guys are great sometimes.
I wanted to play a game with you guys. I'm going to read you rushing numbers from 2 different players on the Eagles. One of them is Miles Sanders, and I'll let you guess who the other one is from the last 4 weeks. And you just tell me what your initial thoughts are. I'll even tell you who Miles Sanders is. Miles Sanders, last 4 weeks, 2 rushing attempts for 27 yards, 7 rushing attempts for 13 yards, 11 rushing attempts for 45 yards, 9 rushing attempts for 56 yards. All right. Now this is player B on the Eagles for the last 4 weeks. 9 rushing attempts, 35 yards, 8 rushing attempts, 47 yards, 9 rushing attempts, 30 yards, 2 touchdowns, 10 rushing attempts, 44 yards, 2 touchdowns. Like if Jalen Hurts was Miles Sanders, we wouldn't be having this conversation, even though he's producing no numbers. Like Jalen Hurts is running like an RB1 in terms of scoring. So it's just like that alone. I thought the 2 would live harmoniously together, but clearly that is not the case. Miles Sanders is a tough one because I want to believe, like you said, Nick, Raiders, Detroit, Chargers, then they get Denver, New Orleans, then it's Giants, Jets, bye, Washington, Giants, Washington. Like the man should be eating, but it's just not happening. So I think your guys' worry level is warranted. And were I a Miles Sanders manager, I think I would hold on to him 1 more week. See what he does against the Raiders. If the workload is in his favor and he puts up a big, outing, great. You can either choose to sell high on that outing or be like, drink the elixir, buy back in. If he sucks, sell him because the narrative is there.
This is one of my favorite things in fantasy, and this is like, sell him for what? Is there someone in your league who doesn't watch football or? is
but I think with someone like Miles
is
Sanders,
like, oh fuck yeah, Miles Sanders.
I think with Miles Sanders, there's a name recognition there, which always goes a long way because there's always someone in your league. Maybe this isn't true with you guys, but I've found in the leagues that I'm in, there's often like one person who's kind of like, meh, do I pay attention to football? No, I watch my favorite team, but everyone else, I don't follow the narratives of the NFL. So Miles Sanders has name recognition. And I think if you were like the schedule I just listed is very favorable. And there is a narrative that could be spun. And I think if you found yourself that Philly fan who cheered when Miles Sanders got his first touch, or just someone who has faith in Miles Sanders, I think you could convince someone that, you could get yourself a serviceable RB flex option for Sanders, or a flex option at receiver, someone, whatever that situation might be. It's there. The potential's there. All right. Second in my worry panic scale index for this week is Chris Godwin. And we spend lots of time dissecting and figuring out what the Buccaneers passing tree is going to look like. But he has been the wide receiver 45 in half-point PPR over the last 3 weeks. And I have two questions for you. And we'll start with you, Clark. Where on the scale do you fall with Chris Godwin for the rest of the season and just generally? But also B, should fantasy managers who have Chris Godwin be relying on him to be a wide receiver 2 consistently for them? Or if that's not the role that he can serve for them, should they be looking to sell him after his, upcoming next, big performance?
Yeah, the worryometer is about a 6, so a little bit more than average. Trying to figure out the Bucks wide receiver room in the preseason was a tough question. And a take that I saw and liked a lot was that Antonio Brown is really just a handcuff for Chris Godwin. That made a lot of sense because Godwin is young, he is flashing, and he was really, really looking great, had a couple of injuries near the end of the year, so that could explain away why Antonio Brown broke out. All of that made perfect sense. It has turned out that Chris Godwin is a handcuff for Antonio Brown. Antonio Brown is getting the work, whether we like it or not. Godwin appears healthy, and he's making plays out there. So, I mean, I don't know what you can do. I mean, if someone really wants him and you can get good value, great. I'd ship him, but I think it's just going to be a player that you just sit with. And if you're in a deep league where you start like 3 wide receivers and 2 flexes or something, you're still throwing him in there as one of your flexes probably. But without an injury, I don't see why this is going to change.
Yeah.
I'll be a little bit contrarian on this one, as opposed to mostly contrarian is how I typically am. But what we have with Godwin is far and away the team's leading slot snap share guy. Now, Mike Evans is cycling in there, and Tyler Johnson is a little bit too. But over the next 2 weeks, they're going up against Chicago and the New Orleans Saints. And thanks to the helpful tools with PFF.com's whatever subscription that I have, we can see that their slot coverage is really not that great. They've got a guy named Duke Shelley who makes me think of Frankenstein every time I look at him, because of the name Mary Shelley. But 17 receptions on 23 targets for 179 yards, NFL passer rating of 96.1. Chauncey Gardner-Johnson in New Orleans, 12 of 16 for 134 yards. We've got a couple other guys on both teams, safeties and cornerbacks, who are seeing a high volume of nickel coverage. And I mean, like Marquis Christian of the Chicago Bears taking 21 slot snaps this year, allowing a perfect 158.3 passer rating. So I'm not panicking on Chris Godwin, because I think that Chris Godwin is basically just doing what I think should have been drafting him to be. He's the starting slot receiver. AB is the starting Z. Evans is the X. And I mean, you look at their Godwin's target totals over the last 2 weeks, 5, 11, 5. He's a very good receiver in an offense that doesn't have to force the ball to anybody. But I think the matchups might be there in the next 2 weeks before their bye, where he's able to get things going and finish in the top 24. I might rank him like 30 or 31. I don't know. But I don't. It doesn't seem to me like Chris Godwin is underperforming, if that makes sense.
Just for fun, Nick, for those next 2 weeks, week 7, week 8.
Yes.
Do you think would you be willing to just, add some spice to the show. Have you eat some more mustard. Would you be willing to put a wheel bet on Godwin finishing through those 2 weeks as a top, wide receiver 2, a top 24 option, or a top 30 to make it?
I would definitely do top 30, and I would have to think about top 24, but I'm definitely comfortable with top 30.
Okay. All right. I'll take you on that. We'll put that in the list. So Chris Godwin for the next 2 weeks, wide receiver 30 or up. I think that is someone. I think that is. I agree with you, Nick, and both. I mean, I think both of you guys have really good opinions on this matter. So well done, both of you. Let me applaud that. But I do think that the expectations for Godwin and Brady have always been kind of inflated, and I don't necessarily know where that has come from. I feel like people have always thought like Godwin is going to click in as the Julian Edelman, Wes Welker for Tom Brady in Tampa, and that clearly hasn't been the case. And so I think Clark, you're right that I would be slightly above a 5 in terms of my worry. And I think you're right, Nick, too, where it's like we shouldn't really be that surprised because it's just there's plenty of mouths to feed in this offense. Brady clearly has a connection with Antonio Brown and wants to get him the football. When Gronk is healthy, we know he's going to throw Gronk touchdowns, and Mike Evans and Brady seem to be on the right track as of recently in this year. They've been much more consistent in getting him the ball. And so that just makes Chris Godwin kind of, the odd man out, and he will have some good performances and he won't. But this is such a high power offense and high efficient or high passing offense that even with that, he can still be a pretty consistent wide receiver 2 for you. So there you go. Nice conclusion to the worry panic scale index. Always nice to end on a just a nice note as opposed to mass hysteria in the streets.
And a fun note, Miles Sanders is the second ranked running back named Miles. Miles Gaskin is like running back 20 in PPR.
Miles Gaskin had one game. This is just goes to show you how bad Miles Sanders has been this year. Good Lord. Miles Gaskin. Miles Gaskin, 10 points week 1, 6, 8, 0, 26.9, and then 1. Yeah. And Miles Sanders can't even beat that.
I believe Jerry Jeudy is coming back and Michael Thomas is on the precipice. So heads up, start making moves for that.
Nice. Nice segue, Clark. You're our man of segues. We wrap it up with our waiver wire ads. If there are some people, either one guy or a cluster of names who you want to make sure you are targeting on waivers this week. I know we touched on a lot of different running backs and a lot of different backfields, and I think you guys mostly just want to reiterate those. But Clark, I'll let you start us off. What are you on waivers? Who you're looking for?
Yeah, so actually, Nick has changed my mind. It was going to be DJ Dallas just because he's getting those PPR points. He's getting them passing out of the backfield, and Geno Smith does not mind just dumping the ball off endlessly. So DJ Dallas should be relatively inexpensive, so go out and get him. But Nick convinced me probably Rashad Penny, only owned in 10% of CBS leagues. I think you really nailed it of if someone is going to step in and really dominate this backfield, it would be Penny.
Nope. I like that call. Nick, who are you adding off waivers?
So this one is a deep league guy. So probably maybe 12 team. Actually, I will be more confident than that. 12 team leagues should look to add Jarrett Patterson. JD McKissick is like a must add if he's available in your league, but Jarrett Patterson is a capable dual threat running back. He's number 3 in Washington. And given what's
that from ourlads.com.
I also do use ourlads.com. Yeah.
Ourlads, if you want to sponsor the podcast, let us know.
Clark, I think we didn't we pick up Jarrett Patterson in our Dynasty Best Ball League last week?
You might have.
Okay, well, I think I did that. I'm fairly certain that
excellent co-manager, Clark Barnes.
Well, you got to, as manager, it's not always your job to make all the decisions. Sometimes you need to empower the capable people that you're working with to contribute.
This guy.
That's right.
This guy.
So Antonio Gibson, he's got, this bad shin injury, and we don't know exactly what's happening here. From what I have read, he might be able to play, but I think at this point, like from David Chow, what he's been saying is it's very likely that he's going to have to undergo surgery. And so anything they do is just kind of making things worse. Like they're going to have to put a metal rod in the lower leg, which is really friggin' brutal. So Jarrett Patterson, capable dual threat guy. JD McKissick, I think, can handle more work than he has received, but we know what he is. He's a passing game specialist. And I think that they're going to want to split up the workload should Antonio Gibson miss time. Patterson is not big. He's 5'8", 195, but you can split 25 touches between those two guys. And I think that they'll be okay.
Clark mentions this all the time, and I'm going to mention it now, that one of the things I love doing doing this show is getting information off of you guys. And in my deep dynasty league, I just added Jarrett Patterson.
Hell yeah.
Because you're totally right. Like if the situation changes in Washington, if Antonio Brown misses extended period of time, JD McKissick, he's already rostered, so I can't add him off waivers. Get the backup. And if he doesn't do anything, that's great. But if he does do something, you've got him already down.
The injury for Gibson, I mean, just to rehash that, isn't it like a crack in his shin or something? And he's been playing with it. But I mean, that's like
not great.
Shin's an important part of the leg. So I know that we've got some really exciting guests coming up, perhaps on the podcast network. But yeah, that's a pretty brutal injury to be playing through.
Yeah. Not excited for that. My top waiver wire target for this week is Rashad Bateman. He is back. Happy days, all abound. 44% roster in sleeper leagues. In his debut, having not played an NFL snap before, he came onto the field and saw 22% of the target share in Baltimore. He played 88% of passing snaps and ran a route every single snap and was targeted on 27% of those routes. And all 4 of the catches he had went for first downs, which to me means that he is a big play guy who Lamar Jackson already has a good amount, and the coaching staff has faith in that they are going to draw up plays to get him the ball in important situations. And the fact that he came in and immediately led the team in targets or led the receivers in targets gives me tons of confidence. And I'm not worried about Sammy Watkins coming back. I think that Rashad Bateman is going to take over Sammy Watkins' role. Marquise Brown will run on the outside just like he has, and Mark Andrews will keep doing his stuff. And you got a trio of excellent pass catches for Lamar Jackson to thrive with. So I am adding Rashad Bateman absolutely everywhere.
Yeah, I think Bateman is a great add. He looked good out there, kind of operates the same way that Andrews operates. Can catch those short passes and was making things a lot easier for Lamar Jackson. I think that we need to, whenever it's very important for all of our Lamar Jackson teams, is start putting out a bunch of stories about how everyone has figured out Lamar Jackson, because that seems to be the impetus to Lamar Jackson really catching fire and showing people that, in fact, no, you have not.
Yeah, I'll do that for us every week.
Excellent.
Now on NerdBall, I'll just write an article saying the NFL has figured out Lamar Jackson, and I'll make sure to add him on Twitter each time so that we get really big performances out of him.
How about that smug bastard who was on ESPN in like late August, who was like, I'm talking to a lot of sources. They're also sure. I'd never seen him before, but like, how are these talking heads? Like, how do you get this fucking job?
Because the media's job is not to provide good information. It's to get your attention.
It's very true.
ESPN puts out a casting call every week. They're like, we need someone to come on and confidently talk about how the NFL has figured out Lamar Jackson. And some guy was like, oh, I can do that. They also asked, are you a white man? Because that just, it gives it more validity.
Speaking of bullshit things, shout out to Aaron Rodgers finding a way to, I saw Tej Seth of PFF brought this up on Twitter today. He circumvented the taunting rule by taunting the fans instead of other players. And I thought that was hysterical.
That's the high level, think GIF meme. Like that's some high level. If we're speaking of bullshit before we end, can we also give bullshit to the Washington team for like rushing a Sean Taylor jersey retirement just to get the news off of their back about all of
that was so fucked up.
What the fuck, Washington? Good Lord. Like we've been planning this for months, and then it comes out, except for the fact that it's come out, like no one's heard about it except for 3 days, like with the game ready to go. And there's all people on Twitter have like pointed out just the absolute how truly false that statement is, that they've been planning this for months through all of the different ways that they handled the actual announcement. So like, I mean, Washington, they their brass deserves all the negative press that they can get, and they're getting plenty of it right now. But like double the like even more negative press for the fact that you like rush a icon player who had a sad premature death, rushes jersey retirement to like try to get the news to change the story about you. Like fuck yourself.
That's a no shame kind of move. That's really disgusting.
No. I feel better.
I do too, Clark. And that's all we got for you this week. Make sure you rate and subscribe to the podcast on your podcast platform of choice. Drop us 5 stars. Really helps us get in front of people and gets us more listenership, which is all what we want. Make sure to follow us on Twitter at NerdBallFF. You can follow myself at Peter M. Rogers. Follow Clark at NFL Clark and Nick at Ginger__Nick without a K. And of course, you make sure you check out all the amazing content we're putting out over on the site, nerdballff.com. Until next week, my fellow nerds.